Okay. Good afternoon and welcome to another exciting edition of whatever this show is, my YouTube channel. Coming to you live from beautiful downtown Crestline in the San Bernardino Mountains of Southern California's Inland Empire. On this Thursday, the 12th of September, in the year of our Lord 2019. Boy, there's a siren in the background. Pay no attention. I'm on one of the main, close to one of the main routes for fire and rescue on this mountain. Wow. There's a lot of glare in the background because it's a sunny day. Hi, Philip. Good to see you. Wow. Just thought I'd go live as long as I'm wearing my dentures for a change. Yesterday, of course, was 9/11. Oh, I'm glad you can hear me clearly. Yay. Um, September 11th, 2001, the airplanes crashing into the Twin Towers. Something happening at the Pentagon and in the sky over Pennsylvania. I try not to get into those were weird. And I hear all this stuff about Building 7 at the World Trade Center, but I remember on that day hearing that Building 5 was a CIA repository for information and that they were taking down Building 5 by controlled demolition with preset charges that apparently were added when that building was constructed to protect their information. Building 7 sure looked like a controlled demolition. And yes, airplanes did hit the towers, people did die, but the way the towers came down was weird. I think this is a case of both and, not either or. There's evidence of all kinds of stuff going on at the site. Okay, let's see. A guy posting daily news and radio broadcasts every day. Exactly after the original reporting in 1939. Reporting of what? The Hindenburg? No, 39. War of the Worlds? He thinks World War II is still going on. War II. Uh, well, frankly, to my way of thinking, World War I never ended. Um, World War II was just an extension of World War I. So he's rebroadcasting the headlines of World War II. And he's going to do it every day for 6 years, 39 to 45. I honestly don't believe that World War II really ended. And I'll tell you why. The German government never surrendered. I've got to do something about that glare behind me. Hang on. Okay, that's a little better. Whew. When I shut that door, I have to come around to the other door because I don't have a key to that door. He has all the broadcasts and headlines. Kind of like the man in the high castle, but a lot more subtle. Well, anyway, the German military surrendered at the end of World War II, but the German government did not. And while I was listening today to the Giza Death Star YouTube channel with Dr. Joseph P. Farrell's news and views from the Nefarium, I heard some disturbing news. Let me see if I can get the link, or if did I delete it? Shame on me. Oh darn, I don't have it anymore. But on YouTube, go to Giza Death Star. No, just Giza Death Star. There's a channel. And Dr. Farrell was talking about the EU and Brexit. And the one of the lords, I've forgotten his name, Lord something or other, in the House of Lords, which is the one of the two chambers of the British Parliament, kind of like our Senate, but you have to be nobility to be in the House of Lords. He was pointing out the problems if they don't exit the EU. And one of the major points was that the British crown, that is, the Queen, that all of the royal family would have to cede power over their own military and police to the European Union, and orders to their military would come from Brussels, not from the Queen, not from the Parliament, not from the Prime Minister, but from others. Thank you, Philip. Lord James of Blackheath. You must be a fan of Joseph P. Farrell. There's, economic concerns as well. At least England kept their own currency and did not go to the euro when they joined the European Union. But if they don't get out, they will have no control over their own military. And apparently, according to Dr. Farrell and his sources, the Europeans, especially Germany and France, want to intervene in Africa to alleviate the problem with so many refugees coming to Europe from Africa. They created the problem, and now they're offering a solution. Send a whole bunch of European and British troops. England, guys, is not in Europe, it's an island like Greenland and Iceland and Australia. So I don't like to call the British Europeans. They're not. So they want to use all the troops from all the countries in the European Union, the EU, to intervene in Africa and relieve the humanitarian crisis that's forcing people to flee to Europe. Yes, Dr. Farrell. Um, for the most part, I agree with what he says. Here and there, I have a minor quibble that's rarely worth mentioning. I'll give you one example. He talked about the sons of God marrying the daughters of men, and he said it was in Genesis chapter 11. Oh, it's actually in chapter 6. It's also in the book of First Enoch, chapter 6, which I find interesting. Chapter 6 in the book of Genesis, which is in the Bible, and chapter 6 in the book of Enoch, which is not in the Bible. But anyway, think about the number 6 and what it might mean. 6 is the number of a man. Interesting. But, that's the sort of thing I quibble with. Nothing important. Well, anyway, as Phil used to say, the Nazis won the war. They really did win World War II. Germany lost, but the Nazis just kind of said bye-bye to Germany and set up camp elsewhere, like the Americas, both North and South. And he was quite aware, of course, of Operation Paperclip and other problems with bringing Nazis to the United States after the war. They were our Nazis. They weren't real Nazis. Right, you bet. And frankly, yeah, they kind of took over Argentina because they had the money to do so. Where'd they get the money? They stole it. They ransacked every place where they invaded. They went so far as to take the gold teeth out of dead people and melt them down for the gold. They stole artwork and other treasures. The Japanese did the same, and apparently they amassed even more wealth. And according to Dr. Farrell, the United States managed to retrieve most of the Japanese loot, but never even thought of returning it to the people from whom it was stolen. No, they needed a secret fund for secret projects. Looks like Philip is praying. Say, I always need prayer. I Hi, Jonathan. Good to see you too. Let's see if I can spell Jonathan while talking. Yay. Well, I try not to walk into woo woo land, but lately, when I've watching YouTube, whether it's live or, an archived show, my internet will cut out and everything stalls. And oddly, when it's a live show, the chat and the show get out of sync because the chat keeps going, but the show has that hourglass going. Oh, Jonathan must be in Hawaii, he said aloha. Well, anyway, I'll just say get the F out or get the hell out in the name of Jesus Christ, and I bind you to leave and never come back by the power of the name of Jesus Christ. And it seems to work. But I don't like walking into woo-woo land. Yes, the hourglass of doom. If I hit refresh, by the time the show starts up again, I'm totally lost because I've missed a few minutes. But at least it's once more in sync with chat. Anyway, speaking of woo-woo land, yes, the paranormal is real, or at least real to me, but I don't like it. It's a dangerous place to go. There's beasties in there that you don't want to meet. Not in a dark alley and not on a sunshiny day. Yeah, I'm drinking coffee too, and water. Whether you're drinking booze or coffee, you also need water. Both will dehydrate you. Anyway, um, shoot. That's what concerns me about remote viewing. You have to empty your mind and let things in. That's freaking dangerous. Don't do it. Oh, hello, IB Collectibles. Don't just let things in. You don't know what you're letting in. Oh, Jonathan's in Orange County. Well, I'm in San Bernardino County, which isn't far away from Orange County, or as we like to say, behind the orange curtain. I grew up in Culver City, but when I was 11 years old, this little thing called the Watts riot happened, so we moved to Anaheim. I was in walking distance of Disneyland when, if you were under 17, you could get in for $2, and then it went up to $2.50, and then it went up to $3, and we could barely afford it. But people would feel sorry for us and give us their tickets for the rides. Now, they didn't give us the E tickets for the good rides. They'd give us the C, B, and A tickets. And that was fine with us. Oh, and the Monsanto microscope was free for years and years, and then they started demanding a C ticket for it. I remember when there was a rocket ship to the moon. Went there on a school field trip because my parents were too cheap to take me to Disneyland. Well, when I was living in Anaheim and got in for a couple bucks, it was the rocket ship to Mars because we had been to the moon. I hope that isn't someone coming to my house. There's a car outside. Well, anyway, back to woo woo. The Nazis were into woo-woo stuff, and look where it got them. Yeah, the 60s were cheap. And about around 1980, I think, 82 or 3, I went to Disneyland with some fellow students, and it was $30 to get in, and my little boy was half price. But it included a book of tickets, one of each, A, B, C, D, and E. Now it costs $100 and there are no tickets, but believe me, if I stood in line for one ride, that's the only ride I'd do for the whole day because I hate standing in line and those lines are huge. Yes, we're in a PKD novel. Oh my gosh, Tim is here. Good afternoon, Tim. I was talking about woo-woo stuff, but for some reason I mentioned Disneyland. Well, a friend and colleague of mine, Walter Bosley, had an experience at the carousel at Disneyland. I don't know if he was talking about the teacup ride or an actual carousel. It's not the same as a merry-go-round. It has horses on it. You really should read Walter Bosley's books. He also likes to stay away from woo-woo land, but it keeps creeping up on him, just like me. Let's see. Philip says Aleister Crowley's, oh, he liked to be called Crowley. Cursed Loch Ness home to reopen as a retreat. Yeah, I wouldn't choose to go there either, Philip. No, thank you, but there are people who are into that stuff. I wonder whether Crowley really believed that stuff that he wrote. There was oh, why am I blank on his name? The head of the Church of Satan in the 60s. When I was a sweet young thing, he had a three-word name. He was on TV all the time too. But Anton Sandor LaVey. Thanks, Philip. Again, um, I can usually count on Philip to come up with the name. He he was on TV a lot. I don't think it was a regular show. It must have been specials. But he copped to the fact that he made it all up to make money. Or was he lying when he said that? Who knows? Philip must be my age and have a better memory. I've always been terrible at names. Terrible. Anyway, the woo-woo stuff is real enough, but you really don't want to play with it. It's seriously dangerous. LaVey cribbed everything from Ayn Rand. I never heard of Ayn Rand being a Satanist. An atheist, sure, and weird, and apparently she liked kinky sex. At least she wrote about it in Atlas Shrugged and The Fountainhead. Wow. Anyway, when I was very young, about 7 years old, I was studied. This group of graduate students from UCLA selected at least 15 students from all the different grade levels at my elementary school for a study in which they wanted us to perform psychic tricks like what's in John's pocket, what's in the box behind the curtain, that sort of thing. Supposedly, it was a study of the relationship between self esteem and leadership ability. It was a longitudinal study, by the way. In other words, it wasn't a one off. They followed us for years. I was not very cooperative. I didn't like them and I didn't trust them. And they knew it. I remember the woman, I think her name was Maureen, yelling at me that I was giving the wrong answers on purpose. Well, I was. And even at 7 years old, or I think I was probably 8 years old by then, I just had this sense that this wasn't right and I didn't like doing it. There was a study published in Scientific American years later. Let's see, it would have been 1967 or 8 when it was published. I managed to get a electronic copy of the article. My older and smarter brother Steve, 3 years older than I was, so when I was 7, he was 10, and when I was 8, he was 11. He remembered the study of self esteem, and he said when he got the issue of Scientific American, because he had a subscription when he was in high school, he read the article and saw his own drawing as an example of one of the drawings that children made when they were being screened for this study. Uh, I remember the drawing that I did. That's how I know I was 7 years old. It's one of my few memories of second grade. The teacher told us, draw a picture of yourself. That was supposed to indicate your level of self esteem. And of all the papers I ever did that year, that one never came home for my mother to see. Never got it back. And I remember it very clearly. I can picture the drawing that I did and remember talking to mom about, not specifically about that picture, but about why I had such trouble drawing people's arms. I said they looked like caveman arms. And what I meant was the upper arm would be skinny and normal, but when I got to the elbow and did the lower arm, it would be big and fat. Well, the weirdest thing about this study was actually that our parents never knew about it. They should have been asked to sign a release or a waiver or something. They never even knew about this study. And then there's the violin classes. Supposedly, in third grade, I was going to study violin during the hour, well, 45 minutes that we spent on spelling. And I couldn't have been learning the violin because when we moved across town to a different school and I went to violin class, I didn't know anything. Well, I tried to do the D major scale, which is the first thing you learn, and I could read the notes on the sheet music and I could play the notes, but I had no clue about sharps, flats, and naturals, and the teacher kept yelling at me because I should have known those things. She assumed that I knew those things. Skipped from third grade to fifth grade, I joined the school choir and I recognized the teacher. He was my original violin teacher. And he yelled at me for quitting and said I would never amount to anything. Telling a 10-year-old kid you'll never amount to anything because you quit violin class. Well, I didn't quit, not when he was my teacher. So somebody must have diverted me to this other thing, the study, by the graduate students from UCLA, if that's what they were. And we were doing ESP, extrasensory perception. I suppose it might have been remote viewing, but they didn't call it that. I'm really upset. I try to be angry, but I'm mostly upset that this was done to not only me, but other children in my elementary school. It's just wrong. Anyway, that's too woo woo. I always assumed that it was my imagination or a dream or a daydream until my brother, I just asked him if there were any special assemblies at our elementary school, Farragut Elementary in Culver City, right next to Los Angeles and Venice. Um, and he said, yeah, there was this study and told me a little about it. But he did not experience any of the ESP stuff or false memories. I got to get some water. I'll be right back. Don't go away. Well, this leads to another weird memory. I thought I had imagined or dreamed about a glowing red orb coming down from the sky until my brother asked me about it. He just mentioned it in passing and I latched onto it. Oh my God, it was real. It had to be August of 1960 because that's when Steve got a telescope for his birthday. And we were out in the backyard after dark, something Mom never let us do, at least not unless she was out there with us. And this glowing red orb came down from the sky. We didn't see it in the telescope. It was too close for that. Yes, coffee's our official beverage, although sometimes I have tea or cocoa. Well, anyway, So just recently, the past few days, I come across this thing on the internet. Let's see. Let's see if I can find it again. It's in, come on, it's in downloads. Here we go. There's this book that I have to buy. UFOs Over California by Preston Dennett. Okay, let's see. I got it open so I can copy and paste into the chat. Theoretically, just stumbled upon it. And I'm reading because I'm interested in UFOs, even though I've never seen a flying saucer or a gray alien. Oh, come on. Find. Here we go. Chapter 4, The Red Bluff Encounter. Let's see if I can fit this much into chat. Now, Red Bluff is quite a long ways from Culver City. Okay, it's too long for chat, so let's do it a little at a time. But as you read down and down, let's see, I gotta make it shorter. Get this in. The wave was centered over the Northern California town of Red Bluff, but actually encompassed Willow Creek, still Northern Cal, and I'm in Southern, Concord, Corning, Eureka, Pleasant Hill, Healdsburg, Santa Rosa, Roseville, and now we're getting close, Mineral, out in the desert, Dunsmuir, not sure where that is, Honeydew, I don't know, but Redlands. Redlands is right down the mountain from where I'm sitting now. And what did they see but a large glowing object over the Red Bluff prison? 2 hours later, this was cited by a deputy sheriff. 2 hours later, other patrol officers observed a large glowing object hovering 200 feet above their vehicle. The officers alerted neighboring sheriff's stations and took off chasing the object. Meanwhile, law enforcement officers in numerous other cities also observed the same or different objects. At the same time, hundreds of calls poured in from citizens. And this was on August 13, 1960. Now, a researcher named James Harder actually delivered an official paper in support. I'll put his name in if I can get here. Here's his name, James Harder, PhD, in support of the case to the Committee on Science and Astronautics, House of Representatives, United States Congress. The Blue Book, Air Force Blue Book project, labeled the case as atmospheric inversion. I think I opened, yeah, I did. Close that. Come on, you. Somehow I opened Firefox. Oh no. Please close. Not now. Close. Thank you. That was in 1968. So Blue Book said it was atmospheric inversion without any investigation. And then I have to get the book. This is just an excerpt. And it ends, still this case remains one of the most intense waves in California history. And then there's an excerpt about the Battle of Los Angeles, which happened a few months after Pearl Harbor. Lots of things were hovering over Los Angeles, so the authorities enforced a total blackout, and the military was called in to fire upon the strange object. That's a non sequitur. Dozens of unknown objects? Oh, there was one large one that hovered over the city at least 6 hours. They trained searchlights on it. The craft was photographed. 6 people died of heart attacks, car accidents, or falling debris. Oh, where was the debris falling from? And the next day, the Los Angeles Times printed a now famous photograph of the object on its front page. Hi, sweetie, there's my kitty cat. Where are you, sweetie pie? What? I gotta spoil my cat. Yeah, I'll get you some treats. This is a person from Porlock moment. Here you go, cat kitty. It's a story that Robert Heinlein liked to tell, that Coleridge was composing his poem about Kubla Khan. In Xanadu did Kubla Khan a stately pleasure dome decree, and so on and so forth. And he had the whole thing outlined in his head. And then someone knocked on the door and asked for directions to the town of Porlock. So Coleridge told him how to get there, shut the door, and went back to his desk and couldn't remember a line of the poem. Cats are the best people, Philip. Not just good, but the best. Anyway, my dad was a kid in Los Angeles, about 14 years old. Not quite 14, because it was a week or so before his birthday, I think. Hope it wasn't on his birthday. But he remembered the battle for Los Angeles, the blackout curtains, and so forth. Anyway, I remember August of 1960, huge to my mind because I was a little kid, glowing red, orange, mostly red, a little orangey globe coming down from the sky. And from my memory, I would estimate that its diameter was about 12 feet. So to me, that was huge. I was probably 3 feet tall, if that, maybe shorter than 3 feet. Oh, wow. But it wasn't a flying saucer, and there were no gray aliens. And we didn't report it. We were kids. I was 6 and Steve was 9. We couldn't even tell Mom because she was mad at us for dawdling when she called us to come into the house and go to bed. We weren't allowed to speak to her because we were bad. We didn't answer her when she called. Well, we were kind of busy looking at this strange object coming down from the sky. Yeah. There's a reason why I say I was raised by cats. It's because I don't like to say who really raised me. I think my oldest brother Rick did more of the raising than Mom did. Mom was always having hangovers and depression and stuff. But when she was up and about, she was most often uh, a witch with a bee. There's no describing how tormented she was. And being in pain herself, she liked to inflict pain on others. Sick and twisted puppy, and I feel sorry for her. She died at age 58, most likely suicide by poison. But the coroner couldn't determine anything. Her heart stopped, but after two autopsies, he couldn't figure out why her heart stopped. Maybe it's because she was so heartless. Hmm. Checking the time. All right. It is 4:17 p.m. here. There's reasons, personal reasons why I'm not doing Freedomizer Radio. Not the least of which is my health, but there's more to it than that. Um, I kind of have had it with blog talk radio, too many glitches. And there's other things that don't care to discuss. But I'm thinking of going to Spreaker. I'm already a member there and I listen to things like Tim Parsons' show. I think it's Red Pill or the original Red Pill or the real Red Pill. I don't remember the exact name, but I'm sure. My connection is unstable. Oh dear, YouTube keeps telling me my connection is unstable. Well, I'm stuck with Verizon because it's the only connection that works at all up here, and they've been really glitchy lately. Yeah, anyway, I have stuff to do. What I'm working on is a book about Philip K. Dick's exegesis, trying to put it in context and in perspective and in simpler terms. It's a monumental task and requires, well, not at my house, okay, requires a lot of research. It will have horrors, footnotes. I will cite my sources. But a lot of it, of course, will come from things that Phil told me, conversations we had, things that we both experienced together. I've tried over the years to just slot Phil's 1974 visions into the mystical box. You know, visions and mysticism, that kind of category. But more and more, I think it, at least at its inception, it was technological in nature. Maybe there really is a Ballast satellite. There definitely were electromagnetic disturbances in our apartment. And there's this book by Robert Guffey called Camelio. Let's see. Robert Guffey. It's like chameleon without the N on the end. Apparently, there was a real um, secret project called Camelio having to do with camouflage, but more than camouflage, ways to harass your enemies, projecting things that are not really there to confuse them, projecting voices that only they can hear, and invisibility cloaks. So you could be in their apartment and you wouldn't be able to see them. And that really does tie into what happened to Phil and me in 1974. Weirdness. So I don't anymore think that his experience was totally mystical and visionary. We really were under attack and harassment, and I think I know why. There was just this slim, meaningless connection to Dr. Timothy Leary, who just happened to be a fan of Phil's books. And because the authorities had Timothy Leary's phone tapped and John Lennon's phone tapped, he was, and so forth, even though they did not have a tap on Phil's phone because he was just this obscure science fiction writer living in poverty. They did have